What's up, guys? Today, we're looking at Brand mid in Wild Rift. Brand is a pure damage machine. Every single ability, including his passive, is built to melt the enemy team. His passive that applies insane burn damage, and thanks to the max health % damage, he completely shreds tanks too. Brand is a great pick in a few specific scenarios. First, when the enemy mid lacks mobility. Second, against low gank threat junglers. Third, when your team has a solid front line to peel for you. And lastly, if your team is lacking AP and your JG is locked in on AD. Brand is a heavy specialist, so you generally want to save him as a counter pick. Since he's all about raw damage, he lacks CC, has zero mobility, and his wave clear naturally pushes the lane, making him an absolute magnet for enemy ganks. On top of that, keeping yourself safe is a struggle. You're prime food for assassins, and once you fall behind, you can pretty much kiss the river and jungle goodbye. Stepping out alone is basically a death sentence. Sure, his range is decent, but unlike Lux or Zera, he can't impact teamfights from downtown while playing safe in lane. That's why getting locked out of the jungle, meaning you can't rotate or group with your team, is absolute game over for Brand. Alright, enough doom and gloom. Let's talk about why you actually play this. Brand is all about stacking up flames and detonating them. Land your spells, get 3 stacks of Ablaze, and boom, chain reaction. With max health % damage mixed into his full combo, he literally melts anything, whether it's a 1v1 or a full-on 5v5 teamfight. Exactly, Brand is an absolute monster in teamfights. When you combine his AoE on W, the E spread, the art bouncing pinball, and passive detonations, if the enemy team groups up, it's a complete disaster for them. He easily fulfills his job as a walking AoE nuke. And don't forget, his Q and W have decent range, letting you trade and harass from safety. So yeah, he can actually pull off some solid long-range poke too. Brand's passive is the core of his kit. Landing your Q on a burning target triggers a hard stun, which is huge for setting up plays or securing kills. Combined with the detonation damage, this stun is the absolute backbone of his entire combo. Best of all, his kit is super straightforward. Your game plan is crystal clear. Stack 3 flames and blow them up. Because his mechanics aren't overly complicated, he's actually a great pick even for beginners to pick up and play. Alright, let's check out this clip. Landing a solo kill on Ziggs in lane is pretty tough. But in teamfights, Brand is an absolute raid boss. So whenever a skirmish breaks out like this, you drop everything, run over, and just spam your spells. Enemies literally melt. Picking up a double kill right here is massive. Brand scales so hard once he gets his items rolling, so you can just snowball the game and carry your team to victory. True to his mage class, Brand's teamfight damage output is just insane. His R is a game winner in skirmishes like 2v2s with your jungler, or 3v3s up top. Packed with full AoE tools, plus individual passive stacks that chain into massive AoE detonations, he completely takes over 5v5 teamfights and dishes out absurd damage. For your landing phase, your main bread and butter is poking with W. It's got great range, making it super easy and safe to chip away at your opponent's health. Here's a sweet trick. Casting E on a burning minion is an amazing harass tool. E deals damage and spreads the fire to nearby targets, but if they're already ablaze, the spread radius gets massive. By bouncing it off the wave, you can safely poke the enemy laner without ever having to touch them directly. Here's the step-by-step breakdown. First, use Q or W to set the minion wave on fire. Next, wait for the enemy laner to walk up for a last hit near those minions. Then, cast your E on the burning minion. The fire bounces off and chunks them for free. It's way easier to land than throwing raw QS or WS, and it keeps you completely safe. And of course, we can't talk about Brand without his bread and butter combo. Whenever you spot an opening, you go for the EQ stun. Follow up with W to keep the burn going, and let the passive detonation finish the job for the kill. As long as the enemy jungler isn't hovering around, you can completely bully enemies trapped under their own tower with W pokes, or even go for the all-in EQW kill if they step out of line. Now, W is an amazing, long-range tool for poking, but keep one big catch in mind. because it's a massive AoE. Spamming it for harass is automatically going to push your wave. Because of this, if your jungler is getting gapped or falling behind, Brand feels miserable to play. Why? Because without jungle control, you can't safely push the wave to get your pokes off. You're constantly vulnerable, and the threat of getting collapsed on by the enemy jungler skyrockets. Alright, now that you know the basics, let's break down Brand's kit piece by piece. Starting with his passive, Blaze. Every single one of Brand's abilities applies a burn stack to the enemy. You can stack this up to 3 times, and it lasts for 4 seconds, with the duration refreshing every time you land a new spell. While ablaze, enemies continuously melt from a dot that burns for roughly 3% of their max HP over those 4 seconds. At his core, Brand is a burst-heavy, AoE shredding mage built around one main concept, stacking flames and detonating them. While his individual spells already pack a decent punch, his true power comes entirely from his passive Blaze. His entire kit is designed to weave stacks and amplify that burn, making those 3 stack detonations the absolute heart of his damage output. Honestly, this passive is the entire champion. It's not just about tossing spells out. The real skill expression comes down to 2 things: how fast you can stack those 3 flames, and how well you can chain those detonations across the enemy team. Plus, keep in mind that being ablaze makes enemies vulnerable to all of his empowered spell effects. Next up, his Sear. This is a straightforward skill shot where Brand fires a fireball straight ahead, dealing magic damage to the first target it hits. But here's the kicker. If you land it on a target that's already ablaze, the burn upgrades the spell into a massive 1.75 second stun. This is Brand's only hard CC in his entire kit. Because of that, the golden rule is always to apply the burn first, then fire off your Q to lock them down with the stun. Landing that stun makes chaining your other spells a breeze and massively spikes your kill pressure. One huge thing to watch out for: Sear can get blocked by minions in jungle camps. Because of this, positioning is everything in the landing phase. You either need to thread it through the minion gaps, or open with E or W to set up the burn first, so you can secure that clutch stun. Moving on to his W, Pillar of Flame. Brand calls down a delayed fiery pillar at a target location, dealing heavy AoE magic damage to anyone caught inside. And if you drop it on someone who is already ablaze, the burn kicks it into high gear, boosting the total damage by a massive 30%. This is your primary damage tool and your go-to for poking. Because the pillar has a slight delay, you have to predict your opponent's movement. So dropping it on a target that's already locked down by a stun or CC is a guaranteed hit. In the landing phase, the classic setup is to catch them right as they walk up for a last hit. Plus, thanks to its generous radius, it doubles as an incredible wave-clearing tool. Next up is his E, Conflagration. This is a targeted click-on spell that scorches a chosen enemy and damages everyone in their immediate surroundings. But here's where it gets crazy. If you cast it on someone who is already ablaze, the burn upgrades, doubling the spread radius and splashing fire across a massive area. Now, remember that he isn't a skill shot, it's a guaranteed target lock. As long as you're in range, it's a free, unmissable hit on the enemy champion. But here's how you really abuse it. Remember that trick with the burning minions? If you EA a minion that's already on fire, the flames bounce off and bounce straight onto the enemy champion for free poke. Plus, in teamfights, casting it on an already ablaze target doubles the spread radius, letting you splash fire across the entire enemy team. Master that minion bounce in the landing phase, and you'll chunk your opponents safely every single time. And finally, his ultimate, our Pyroclasm. Brand launches a massive fireball at a target enemy that ricochets back and forth, bouncing up to 5 times between enemies and even Brand himself, dealing chunking damage every single hit. The burn upgrades are insane too. Any target hit while ablaze gets slapped with a heavy 30 to 50% slow, and the bounces are automatically programmed to prioritize burning champions. This is your ultimate teamfight winning button. The tighter the enemy stack up, the more the damage skyrockets. And when you weave in those passive detonations, you literally melt the entire enemy team. But here is a pro trick for 1v1s. If you're fighting a single target with no other units around, you can position yourself right on top of them, so the fireball bounces back and forth between you and the enemy, guaranteeing every single hit. At a glance, Brand's individual spells might look pretty standard, but his entire kit is a masterpiece of synergy built entirely around his passive burn. Just wrapping your head around that simple loop, apply fire, stack it up, and detonate will completely transform your damage output, especially if you're just starting out. Keep these 3 golden rules in mind. Master the minion-y bounce instead of forcing direct trades. Always set up the burn before firing your Q to guarantee that stun. Factor in the delay when dropping your W pillar. Stick to these 3, and you'll see your win rate skyrocket. Sure, his lack of mobility means your positioning has to be on point. But once you master his spell flow, Brand turns into an absolute powerhouse capable of single-handedly winning team fights. Good luck out there, and go melt some lobbies. Asterisk. Now let's talk about itemization. Because Brand's entire identity revolves around his burn, and you want items that synergize directly with that damage style, turning his flames from an annoyance into an absolute health bar melting nightmare. Kicking things off, Blackfire Torch is arguably your go-to #1 item choice for Brand. It hands you the exact holy trinity of stats he craves: AP, a deep mana pool for spell spamming, and ability haste. But the real selling point is its passive, Baleful Blaze, which stacks an extra layer of burn damage every time your abilities connect, turning your poke into an absolute nightmare. This thing synergizes with Brand's passive like an absolute glove, turning your multi-target dot pressure up to 11. It's custom built for dot mages who live and breathe by spamming spells off cooldown, making it an absolute must-have in your core build. Next up, we have Liandry's Torment, easily the most non-negotiable core item in Brand's entire build. It cranks out max health percentage burn damage, and its passive ramps up your damage the longer you stay in the fight. When you stack this on top of your innate passive burn and Blackfire Torch, you get a terrifying triple burn stack that turns even the beefiest tanks into literal paper. Once your core burn is locked in, you can start rounding out your build for maximum carnage. Transition into items like Infinity Orb or Rabadon's Death Cap to skyrocket your AP, extend your kill pressure, and turn every single spell into an absolute execution tool. Now, what about Rylai's Crystal Scepter? Even for mid-brand, it's definitely a totally viable pickup depending on the game state. That said, rather than locking it in as an automatic rush item for pure damage, treat it more as a tactical, utility-focused choice built to lock down movement and secure your positioning. If enemies have high mobility, and you feel like you often miss kills, you can actively consider it. Now let's talk about a sleeper OP pickup that fits Brand like a glove, Bloodletter's Curse. This item was practically custom built for dot champions, making it an absolute match made in heaven for Brand. Because your passive burn counts as continuous magic damage, it automatically stacks the Mr. Shred long after your initial spell hits. And since Brand thrives on throwing out multiple abilities and keeping that burn rolling, you'll hit that maximum 30% magic resist shred almost instantly. Patch notes literally designed this as the go-to magic pen item for burn specialists, and Brand is poster boy #1. If the enemy team is stacking MR or building tanky, and you need a little extra beef to survive, slot this into your build and watch their magic resistance melt away. I've only been on YouTube for a month now, but I want to say a huge thank you to all 28 of my subscribers. Real talk, Wild Rift has been out for 6 years now, so the new player pool is pretty slim. And let's be honest, most US players aren't picking up a MOBA on their phones. It's a tough market, but even if it's a niche crowd, I really hope this guide can help out at least a few English-speaking Wild Rift players who are out there grinding and enjoying the game.